Anna Cramling, chess streamer, woman FIDE Master, and daughter of 2 grandmasters, seems to enjoy playing at El Retiro Park in Madrid. Anish Kumar Giri, chess grandmaster since the age of 14, is also an active member of the chess streaming community. In this game, Anna, playing as white, faces a 5 vs 2 challenge against Anish, who is playing as black with 3 minutes less. Ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens of all ages, welcome to Chess of Legends. The game starts off with Benoni defense, where black opts for the modern variation. Here, Anish sacrifices pawn structure for active piece play. In the context of modern Benoni, playing knight f3 is standard, but can be seen as passive and somewhat inaccurate. Alternatives like bishop d3 or queen e2 provide greater flexibility as they prepare for a central pawn push and allow for connecting rooks without prematurely committing to knight development. One of white's strategic aims should be to push e5, aiming to challenge black's central and kingside structure. After Giri's castling, Cramling develops the bishop to a strong central square. However, this must be carefully weighed against black's potential counterplay options, such as the b5 expansion, which is a common thematic response in the Benoni defense. In this game context and given the pawn structure, bishop to g4 seems aggressive but actually misplaces the piece. A better alternative for black could have been moving the knight to a6, targeting the c7 square to support a b5 pawn advance. By castling, Anna effectively completes the development of kingside pieces, with the knight on f3 and the bishop on d3, setting the stage for queenside development. On the other side of the board, Anish develops the knight, aiming to bolster the c5 pawn and prepare for central counterplay. Even though marked as a slight inaccuracy, h3 intends to prompt the bishop on g4 to clarify its intentions. However, this move's slower pace allows Anish to efficiently break the pin with bishop takes f3, potentially resulting in doubled f-pawns for white. Anna recaptures with the queen, maintaining pressure along the f-file and keeping the center under watch. Also marked as a slight inaccuracy, a6 is criticized here for its perceived lack of urgency. Compared to Anna's a4, a proactive move that blocks Anish's immediate b5 advance, while also paving the way for potential queenside expansion. Then Giri prepares the rook for a c4 thrust, intensifying pressure on Cramling's center and queenside structure. By relocating a bishop to a more dynamic square, Anna supports the center and aims at the b6 square, potentially setting the stage for openings along the d-file. Anish reinforces his rook position, gearing up for an e5 break to challenge white's pawn formation and further activate his pieces. Anna replies with a symmetrical rook alignment on the e-file. The black's queen targets the a4 pawn and introduces the possibility of a queen and bishop battery against the e1 rook, should the e-file open. On move 16, Anna's aggressive g4 play, while bold, could have been strategically substituted with bishop f2, a less committal move that would maintain pressure and control over the center and queen's side. The black queen then targets b2 while also contesting control over e4. As a response, Anna's rook to e2 is a defensive move, aiming to either double rooks on the e-file or support the advance of g4 to g5. However, this move signals a shift towards a more defensive posture by Cramling, reacting to Giri's threats rather than advancing her own plan. Anish's push with b5 directly challenges white's queenside structure, taking advantage of the queen's presence on b4, aiming to open lines and destabilize Anna's defense. By choosing to capture on b5, she accepts the pawn sacrifice, opening the a-file and potentially enhancing the rook's activity. However, this move also gives up control over the c4 square, a critical decision point in the game. Pushing the pawn to c4 immediately after white's exchange on b5 is a strategic masterstroke for several reasons. It significantly expands black's presence on the queen's side, limits the movement of white's bishop on d3, and unlocks pathways for black's pieces, with a particular focus on activating the rook on c8. When Anna retreats her bishop to b1 compelled by black's advancing c-pawn, the move serves as a defensive tactic to preserve the bishop's diagonal activity. Then, Anish recaptures the pawn on b5, maintaining the integrity of his pawn structure on the queen's side. At this point, unfortunately, by advancing the g-pawn to g5, Anna significantly weakens the kingside pawn structure, particularly the squares around the king. Although pushing the g-pawn might seem aggressive, the attack doesn't create an immediate threat to black's position. The move g5 draws resources and attention away from the center and queen's side, where Anish is beginning to apply pressure, particularly with the pawn on c4 menacing to undermine Anna's central and queenside structure. After g5, Giri's knight can move to h5, where it finds an excellent outpost and can potentially be rerouted effectively. Here, Anna's move is deemed inaccurate because it exposes the queen to potential harassment from black's pawns, lacks coordination with the other pieces, and neglects crucial issues such as central control and the queenside pressure exerted by black's advanced c4 pawn. But then Giri's decision to move the knight to c5 overlooks the opportunity to target Cramling's weaknesses, such as the overextended g5 pawn and the exposed king. In this context, instead of repositioning the knight to c5, there was a prime opportunity to challenge white's structure directly with moves like f6, aiming to undermine the g5 pawn and open lines towards Anna's king. For white, a more strategic approach might have involved consolidating the position, perhaps by doubling rooks on the f-file with rook to f2. What do you think? In addition, Anna's decision to push her pawn to f5 represents a significant blunder. Up until move 21, the game was evenly poised, with both sides having their chances. The pawn structure remained relatively closed, and both players were preparing for a middle game struggle where piece activity and control over key squares would be pivotal. By advancing the f-pawn, Cramling forfeits control over the e5 square, which could have served as a crucial outpost for her pieces, particularly the knight or a bishop. The loss of control also grants Anish more flexibility in maneuvering his pieces into more aggressive positions. Given the configuration of pieces on the board, Anish can exploit the opened lines and diagonals to launch attacks, particularly targeting the weakened squares around white's king and now the overextended f5 pawn. Again, Anna's move f5 was overly ambitious and disregarded fundamental principles, such as maintaining a solid pawn structure and ensuring the king's safety in the middle game. Black's response, moving the bishop to e5, while not a blunder, is also not without its flaws. Following f5, Anish had a more forceful response available to exploit the weakening of Anna's pawn structure and the overextension of white's pawns. Moves like a pawn exchange on f5 or even preparing f6 could have been more impactful. While bishop to e5 places the piece on an active square, it doesn't fully capitalize on the positional advantages offered by Cramling's previous move. Afterwards, Anna successfully opens the h-file, doubling rooks on the f-file to signal aggressive intentions. Meanwhile, Anish solidifies the kingside defense and prepares for counterplay. Even though moving the knight to e2 might be intended as a defensive maneuver to regroup and possibly contest squares like f4, the action lacks an offensive threat that could shift the balance, thereby allowing Anish more freedom to continue his own plans. Positioning the knight on f4 makes it directly vulnerable to capture by black's bishop on e5. Given the circumstances, this trade is unfavorable for Anna, as it results in the loss of a knight for a bishop in a position where the knights could potentially have greater maneuverability and pose more tactical threats. As a result, the exchange on f4 greatly favors black, both in material and positional terms. Anna's knight to f4 move fails to recognize the immediate tactical repercussions and the long-term strategic drawbacks of sacrificing the knight for the bishop. Giri's bishop takes f4 capitalizes on his oversight effectively, simplifying the position to favor black's piece's activity and potential for creating threats against white's king. Cramling recaptures on f4 with a bishop, maintaining material balance after the exchange. Aiming to bolster central control and activate the rook, Anish captures the pawn on e4, placing it on an open file to directly challenge Anna's queen. Anish doubles rooks, aiming to penetrate white's position and leveraging the rook's activity. Then Anna repositions the bishop to d2, possibly aiming to defend against black's threats and control key squares. However, this move fails to address the immediate problem of the doubled rooks and the pressure they exert. In response, Giri captures Cramling's queen with the rook, simplifying the position and gaining a material advantage in the process. Anna captures the black queen on b4 with her bishop, aiming to recover material balance and simplify the position. But then, Anish recaptures the bishop with the rook, maintaining pressure and aiming to utilize the active rook to exploit white's weakened pawn structure. Subsequently, white captures on f7 with her own rook, aiming to create direct threats to black's king and looking for tactical opportunities to leverage the rook's position. Anish counters Anna's immediate threats while continuing to advance his strategic objectives, as opposed to Cramling's somewhat scattered forces. Anna captures the rook on f4, still aiming to simplify the position by exchanging pieces, even while facing a material deficit. Anish responds by capturing white's rook on f4, aiming to leverage the material advantage in a less crowded board. The game now moves towards a critical phase, where pawn promotion becomes a central theme. Anna moves the rook to e1, directly addressing the immediate threat of black's d-pawn promotion. Anish advances the d-pawn to d2, one step away from promotion. Cramling seeks to create tactical opportunities and delay the promotion, but Giri's strategy is clear: simplify where advantageous and push the d-pawn towards promotion. Anna Cramling put up a tough fight, trying to turn the tables with some smart moves, but Anish Giri's steady hand led him to victory. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe so we know to keep making more like this one. Until next time, keep those kings safe and those minds sharp.